Tonight's episode is different. This isn't fiction. This is one of the most disturbing true cases in American history, retold through the lens of trace crime files. January 15th, 1947, Los Angeles. A city basking in sunlight and ambition. A city that promised fame to anyone who could survive its shadows. But that morning, on a quiet stretch of Norton Avenue, a young mother pushing her stroller stopped in horror. Lying in the vacant lot ahead was something so gruesome, so perfectly staged, that it would scar the city's soul forever. She wasn't famous in life, but in death, she became a legend. This is the story of Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia. It was just after 10 a.m. when the first call came in. Patrol officers arrived to find a body. A young woman, pale as porcelain, severed cleanly at the waist. There was no blood, not a drop. Her skin had been drained, her features carefully arranged. Whoever did it hadn't acted in rage. They had crafted a scene. Detectives described it later as a performance in horror. The body had been washed, the wounds precise, surgical even. A smile had been carved into her cheeks. Nearby, faint tire tracks and a single heel print were all that remained of the killer's presence. The press arrived before the coroner, and within hours, every newspaper in Los Angeles was screaming the same headline. The Black Dahlia found dead. The name, a macabre twist on a popular film noir of the time, the Blue Dahlia, stuck instantly. Elizabeth Short had entered history. Elizabeth was 22, born in Massachusetts. She'd come to Los Angeles chasing the same dream as thousands of others, to be seen, to be remembered. Friends described her as quiet, polite, always immaculately dressed. She spoke like someone raised on Hollywood dialogue, hopeful, romantic, rehearsed. She lived out of cheap apartments and hotel rooms, drifting between jobs, auditions, and borrowed beds. To some, she was mysterious. To others, lonely. Her friends remembered her saying, "Someday, they'll know my name." She had no idea how right she'd be. Detectives on the case, Harry Hansen and Finest Brown, immediately knew this wasn't ordinary violence. The precision of the cuts suggested surgical knowledge. The lack of blood implied the killing happened elsewhere, the body transported and displayed. Autopsy reports revealed extensive torture. The medical examiner noted ligature marks on wrists and ankles, and signs she'd been alive for hours before death. The killer hadn't just murdered Elizabeth. He had composed her death. Within days, the city turned into a circus. Reporters swarmed the LAPD. Radio shows dramatized theories before the evidence was even cataloged. False confessions poured in. Dozens of men claimed responsibility. Some sought fame. Others just wanted to be part of the horror. One envelope arrived at the Los Angeles Examiner containing Elizabeth's birth certificate, social security card, and photographs. The note read, "Here is Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." It was signed the Black Dahlia Avenger. The envelope's return address? Cut and pasted newspaper clippings, like a ransom note from a nightmare. Fingerprints were wiped clean. But the choice of words, Avenger, made detectives wonder, was this revenge or ritual? Over time, there were hundreds of names, but only a few stood out. One was Mark Hansen, the owner of a Hollywood nightclub where Elizabeth sometimes worked. He was older, powerful, and reportedly infatuated with her. She had stayed at his home briefly. When she rejected his advances, he turned cold. Police questioned him extensively, but his alibi airtight. Then there was Robert Manley, a traveling salesman who had been the last confirmed person to see her alive. He passed a polygraph test and was cleared. And then came the strangest suspect of all, a doctor. Dr. George Hodel. He was a wealthy physician and socialite who lived in a sprawling, Mayan-style mansion in Hollywood. His son would later recall dark parties, strange noises, and a father whose fascination with death blurred the line between intellect and obsession. Hodel's name entered the case in 1950 when he was investigated for other violent crimes. Police bugged his house. The recordings captured chilling fragments. Suppose I did kill the Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore. She's dead. The surveillance was cut short before a warrant could be issued. Hodel fled to the Philippines and never faced trial. When he died decades later, his own son, a retired LAPD detective, reopened the files privately and concluded that his father had indeed been the killer. The evidence was circumstantial, but the coincidences were staggering. Medical training, access to surgical equipment, and a history of violence toward women. But there was another, darker theory that emerged years later. One that saw Elizabeth not as a random victim, but as a symbol. Her death mirrored the aesthetics of surrealist art. The symmetry, the dismemberment, the deliberate display. Some experts believe the killer staged her body as a grotesque imitation of a painting by Man Ray, a friend of Hodel's known for blending beauty and violence. If true, the Black Dahlia wasn't just murdered, she was turned into art. The case became one of the longest-running unsolved murders in Los Angeles history. For decades, every detective who touched the file felt its weight. Some called it cursed. Careers ended in frustration. Leads vanished into dead ends. Elizabeth's mother, Phoebe Short, moved back east, refusing to read the papers. She once said, "They made her into something she wasn't. She was just a girl who wanted to be loved." Her daughter's grave remains modest. Her name, her dates, and nothing more. No mention of the legend she became. In recent years, cold case analysts have revisited the evidence with new tools. DNA testing on the original envelopes yielded partial profiles. Not enough for confirmation, but pointing towards someone within the original suspect pool. Digital reconstructions of the crime scene support the theory that the body was posed deliberately to face the sunrise, as though the killer wanted the first light of morning to reveal his work. LAPD archivists call the case the ghost that never sleeps. Every year, a few new theories surface. Filmmakers, historians, amateur sleuths, all chasing the same truth. Who was the Black Dahlia's killer? And perhaps more hauntingly, why her? 70 years later, the Black Dahlia still defines Hollywood's dark side. Her name has appeared in novels, films, even fashion, a symbol of beauty destroyed by fame's cruelty. But beneath the myth lies the real Elizabeth Short, a young woman who wrote letters home to her mother, signing them Love, Bet. She laughed too loudly, dreamed too big, and trusted the wrong people. And in that trust, she crossed paths with someone who saw her not as a person, but as a canvas. Los Angeles likes to say it builds dreams, but sometimes it builds illusions, and illusions are fragile things. In January of 1947, Elizabeth Short became the face of every ambition gone wrong. Every secret the city tried to bury beneath its sunshine. Her case remains open, her killer unconfirmed. But perhaps the greater mystery isn't who killed the Black Dahlia. It's why her story still refuses to die. A story of beauty and brutality, where one woman's search for light became Los Angeles' darkest legend. Stay tuned to find out what happens next in part 2. This was Trace Crime Files. Subscribe for more stories where truth is stranger than fiction, and justice is never as simple as it seems.